buildings in landscape, there are two modes for buildings in landscape. There's the informal model and the formal model. So let's say it follows the street positive form or the street positive kind of thinking. The first one is the informal, meaning you're going to create a sort of crazy shape design. Let's say, let me delete this. Delete. Let's say you have a lot that's like this. That's your lot. Let's make it similar to the context of Ayala. Let's put another street here. And let's extend this street over here. So let's say this is your Ayala site. And this is your lot over here. So according to Moten, if your building has a very dynamic form, let's go inside this lot, make group. You would want to place it or arrange your site in such a way that your building can be viewed from all sides. So let's say your building is very dynamic. I'm just going to use a block here. Wait, let's start off with reversing the faces. And then your building is kind of, oops, like that, but we sort of make it dynamic. Let's just move one angle in. Let's say your building looks like this. Oh, wait, that's too much. That. Oh, that, and like, I can't move it anymore. Let's say your building looks like this, a bit sculptural, not your traditional box. And then I'll move this down a bit. Whoops. It's moving the whole thing. It's because it's part of a group. Okay, let's see, it looks like that. So the reason why, very quickly, why it's a good idea to have landscaping or set your building back away from the street is then your visitors, your guests, your customers can appreciate the building from all sides. And that's why you made it an abstract looking building in the first place, to make it look dynamic, to make it look interesting. Now, if you have this dynamic shape, make a group. And then I'll just erase the lot below it. Okay. And then increase the scale. Oops. Let's erase this. Let's say you want to use up all your lot. Let's see, scale. And fill up your building all the way up to the edge of the street. Let's say something like that. Now you have a bigger building, which for some people is good, but now your visitors can't appreciate the whole detail. They can't appreciate the whole building. So it's no longer as effective, basically, from the street level, because we're thinking about urban design, we're thinking about street, we're thinking about public space. Even if you stand here, you may be able to catch a glimpse of that like weird structure, but you only see one part of it. So that is why Moten suggests that if you're going to make a dynamic looking building, make sure you have a large enough lot, and then that your building can be seen from all sides. And then if you don't follow it, you end up with something like the building positive like thinking. So the building is competing for attention, and it breaks away from the order of the public space. So let me undo all of that. But if you regulate the size of your building, it will still fit in the public space, and that sense of enclosure is more, what they call this, it's not visible, but it's still there, like unconsciously. You can still see figuratively, and not just figuratively, but actually you can still draw a line, as Google SketchUp has done for me, that this height here, let me just increase this a bit. So it's actually the same height. There. You can see that the volume of the building still has the same height as the surrounding buildings. It's just that it's set back. And then the new sense of enclosure is created by this sort of imaginary wall here. And then you can fill that up or populate it with like landscaping or whatever you want. But the key goal for like the first mode of like informal buildings is to give your viewers, basically the people, the public, space to appreciate your building. That's why you set it back. Okay, so that's mode one. Mode two is basically this. So you create a new lot, you make the building follow the existing structures around it. So this is the informal model, and this is the formal model. That's basically it. Next, we have the, am I recording properly? Yes, I'm recording. Next, we have the buildings of simple geometric shape. So you need to have sufficient space. You need to have sufficient similar architectural treatment, and then you need to have a dominating building. So the example for this, I think I actually have a PowerPoint for this. Like, I can't remember now. Where is it? Yeah, everything got so busy during Yolanda. So an example for this would be the Leaning Tower Pisa Complex. It's the Pisa Complex. Sorry, it took me a while to remember. So let's look for a better picture. Let's look at maps. Yeah. So the Pisa complex in, where is this? Where am I? Yeah, in Pisa, in Rome, Italy. What country, what sort of state or city is this? Torre de Pisa in Florence. Sorry, that took me a minute to remember. Okay, so let's take a look at Pisa. We didn't discuss this last week because I couldn't remember. So you have three buildings, and it follows the informal or formal model. Let's put a poll for this because it's actually an interesting question, a good way to test if everyone understood. Poll, start the poll. Does the Pisa complex follow the uh, follow the blank already? I'll just say informal versus or formal model. I'll just say Moten's because it's Moten's ideas. So option one is informal. Option two is formal. And these principles sort of build on each other. Save, launch. So please fill that in. We'll give that a few minutes. So let's describe what we're seeing first. In Florence, we have a very, what do you call this? Public space or street positive urban fabric. So we go down near the site. We see similar buildings, similar buildings, similar building heights, similar architectural treatments. Notice that the street width is shorter than the building height. This creates that sense of enclosure. Basically, simply put, it creates a feeling that you're inside a room, even though you're out in public. So that's a bit poetic, a bit abstract. If you have questions about that, feel free to type it in the chat. Oh, sorry. I bit my lip over the weekend, so it's a bit hard to talk. Okay, so that's one street towards the Pisa complex. Let's look at the other streets. Let's just zoom in. I won't go through the street level. Again, similar buildings, similar architectural styles, similar building heights, and the site context of Pisa, or Pisa, I don't know which one is the correct pronunciation, should already tell you whether it's following the formal or informal model. I think there's a question here. As if one said, ang deadlines of final project. No, it's March 16. Hey, pwede kayo authoritative tanawon. Ah, interesting. 5 votes so far. People say formal. People say formal. Interesting. In a way, you are true because it is still simple geometric shapes. It's similar buildings. But in the context of the site, let's look at it like from this view. Outside the property lot, the property boundary, the lot, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the cathedral, and the baptistry, and the Campo Santo, I would argue that they don't look the same. They follow the informal model. Okay. I would like to know those who said formal, why you thought so, because this is just purely subjective at this point. You may be looking at the buildings from a different point of view, and I would like to know your point of view. And this will help you like figure out your koanpod, your design in the future. Like, where is your point of view? Are you thinking about the buildings inside a lot, or are you thinking about the buildings outside a lot? Basically, the difference between thinking inside the box and outside the box, like literally. So, someone from the formal group, please just give me a short description as to, or like explanation as to why you chose formal, or yeah, we have 5 votes here. Can anyone from the five hop in? And there are no right or wrong answers. We're just using Moten's principles as sort of like a base point. And then when we do get to the quiz, you will know the right answer because I will tell you right now after our discussion. Okay. Come on, formal people. Anyone from the five? Of course, I'm writing down your names here. And then remember, we're approaching midterms. Our pre-final, I will discuss it after the session. Our pre-final will be a sort of writing activity. And then a writing activity for me, it doesn't have to be, there's no right or wrong in a writing activity. Just make sure that the thoughts are arranged properly. Okay, no one at all from the formal side. Yes, pwede ka mo type, wag yung problema. But nahan ko mo jump to informal. Okay na, that's a good point. Anyone who would like to defend their answer as to why formal, because I can be convinced. I can be convinced, but like from this point of view, since no one is like hopping in, I think we need to keep moving. If I'm thinking inside the lot, let's go down here, street level. If you look at this, if you think the definition of formal, which is pretty valid, just simple buildings, and then they have similar architectural type, similar architectural motifs, then you could say that this building is formal composition, especially on this side. Like just these two, they look very formal. And then if the Pisa complex, the Pisa Tower wasn't leaning, it would be more so a formal composition. So let's look at 2D. Let's look at the site. You have an axial composition here, like symmetrical. Not really symmetrical, but the cathedral and the baptistry are symmetrical. The tower is like not symmetrical, offset over here. Camposanto is also a bit offset, just because the shape of the site of the lot. I think what some people are saying, why some people are saying formal, is because it's a Renaissance sort of style. I think that's going on. That's what's going on. For people in the formal who agree, or like if that's what you're thinking, please like let me know in the chat. Like, sir, yes, sir, that's what we were thinking. But according to Moten, again, this is just according to Moten. You can disagree. This is just a way of thinking, a way of like designing. Moten would say this is an informal model, but following the principles of buildings of a simple geometric shape. So number one, does it have sufficient space? Meaning the dynamic nature of the building groups will be appreciated, requires sufficient space around the building so that so that the ever-changing composition is seen from various viewpoints. Let's go back to Pisa or Pisa. I need to decide on a pronunciation for that. Just looking at it, just looking at the lot plan, even in 2D, you see there's generous space to walk around the building. These buildings were definitely meant to be seen from all angles, like 360. You can walk around the building, maybe except the corner of the cathedral here and two sides of the Camposanto. But definitely the leaning tower and the baptistry, meant to be seen from all sides. So check, it has sufficient space. The S sounds really hits my luas right here. Igo good in luas. Next, architectural treatment. Obviously, it's all Renaissance style. I think they also have just one architect. Let me double check who that was. Pisa Complex. Look at the wiki. Piazza del Miracoli, architect. Let's see here. The cathedral, dedicated, blah, blah, construction, architect Buscetto. And then the baptistry, the architect known as oh, sorry, it's a different architect. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. And then the tower might very likely would be a different architect again. The construction to a tower stands 26. It doesn't say. Okay, but anyway, even if these were done by 4 different architects, it looks like part of like one big project or like one composition. So similar architectural style, most definitely. So check. And then finally, a dominating building. The successful composition, blah blah blah. You need one building that dominates or like puts into order the whole complex. So in this thing, this is where it gets tricky. Let me double check with Moten because I can't remember which one he said was the most dominating, but I'm gonna try and guess it's the tower. It's because of the height. Let's double check there. So plan 3. Let's see. Let's move to chapter 3. Pa, 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 pa. Page 63, 70. Here we go. Pa, pa, pa. Let me see. Approaching. Type optimize our buying. Seen one individually or as a group. Oh, I didn't highlight which one he thought was the dominating building. Let's see here. Building simple geometric shape. The similar architectural styles. One building dominating the rest by its sheer size and bulk. But there are 3 important religious buildings: cathedral, baptistry, the piazza. Attempt to create a sense of spatial enclosure. There is no attempt to create a sense of enclosure. Where's my highlight here? There we go. Main buildings, that the cathedral. Okay, I didn't highlight it, so I need to review that. Or you can also check it out later. Okay, let me close that. But that's the second principle, building upon the first one, where we were talking about informal and formal models. So buildings of simple geometric. No, sorry, buildings in landscape. Next, the right angle. So for our example here, it was the what was it called? You see my search history. Let's go back to the book. It was the Churchill Gardens in London. Churchill Gardens, London. Okay. So are these buildings of simple geometric shape? Yes. Oh, but before that, is this a formal or informal composition? Let's make a poll again. Polls. Create a new poll. Is the Churchill Gardens a formal or informal composition? So let's put informal one. Let's make informal the first one. Okay. Informal, formal. Sorry, big lunch. Okay, so it's a shame that we couldn't. It doesn't show you the names, but only 10 people voted. But okay, now looking at the Churchill Gardens, is it an informal or formal composition? And then we'll try to get one, what do you call this? One explanation from either side. So let's take a look at the site. Zoom out a bit. So literally, I'm hoping that you guys get the theme na. Now, when you design buildings, you get a lot. You don't just look at the lot. You look at the buildings and the site around it, like preferably at this scale. So if you have a lot that's like this big, you zoom out this much. If you have a smaller lot, like for example, this building, the U.S. Embassy, London, so you only need to zoom out that much. You don't need to zoom out that much. Like there's also a sense of scale to this. Like if your building is, let's say, this is 1 unit, you need to zoom out 2 units or twice as much. So if the Churchill Gardens are 1 unit, you need to zoom in twice as much. So like that. So this is what we mean when your architecture has a sense of scale, at least in this class, according to Moten. So let's check in the poll. Everyone said formal, and according to Moten, you are correct. So comparing the Pisa complex, let's make this the Pisa complex, and the maps, Churchill Gardens, immediately you can tell right away. Just look at the shapes, look at the volumes, the forms. Churchill Gardens is a formal composition. It maintains the building heights and the geometry of the surrounding site, basically the surrounding city block, and then just repeats them. The only thing it changes is that here inside the complex, the Churchill Gardens, the buildings are arranged in right angles or by right angles, like perpendicularly and parallel. These yellow buildings are parallel. These white buildings are perpendicular to the yellow buildings. And then the rest of these complexes over here are parallel already. So these are, from what I understand, apartment buildings. You can see Churchill Gardens Youth Club. These smaller buildings over here are like mixed use, but mostly residential as well, with like some businesses underneath. And then over here, you have Churchill Gardens Tenants Association. So they're all residential. And then I hope some of you have noticed that this looks a lot like the Pruitt-Igoe Development Complex. So the ones that got demolished. Open image in new tab. Oh, that's still too small. So this is where things get tricky. You can apply all the right principles, all the right concepts of like aesthetics, etc., etc. But as we stated last week, if you don't talk to the people, you don't talk to your like clients and users. Sometimes your clients aren't your users, so you really have to go down there, talk to the people, and then make sure that your buildings, even though they look nice, they have all the principles, that the end users are being consulted. Also notice that in this composition, the Pruitt-Igoe complex, even though it has simple geometric shape, it has similar architectural styles, and you have enough space to walk around the buildings, I wouldn't call this a formal composition. So let's make one more poll. So this is like this is now, I can't do this in Google Maps because the Pruitt-Igoe complex has been demolished. Complex, an informal or a formal composition. Okay, so number 1 is informal. Number 2 is formal. So you already know what kind of quiz you will have on the midterms. So I'll just send you a bunch of maybe like 5 points on this or 10, depending on how well we do. So look at this picture. I can't do this in Google Maps. Is this a formal or informal composition? Pruitt-Igoe. Okay, I kind of said the answer earlier. So yes, it is an informal composition because if you look at it, the building heights are not the same as the surrounding area. Even the road widths are not the same. A very complete, sort of not really complete opposite, but a very clear contrast is seen when you compare it with the Churchill Gardens. The Churchill Gardens are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories high at its tallest buildings, which is the same for every building near this area. Yes, question. As it stands alone, sir. What do you mean stands alone? I need context for that comment.
The Pruitt I go, sir.
Mm. What do you mean it stands alone?
It doesn't go well with the neighboring buildings
Exactly, exactly,
and
exactly. Okay,
other
now I understand.
familiar.
Yes. Okay, we got it. We got it. Everyone in this class gets this concept of informal and formal modes. Let's call them Motin's modes or something, something catchier. But yeah, so immediately you can tell that Pruitt Igo was most likely going to fail just because of the scale, the heights, the design that the developers went with. Now, let's go to Balikta IT Park and then kibahan na mo sa question. Is IT Park, I'm gonna tag post, this is good, is all according to plan, even though I'm kind of just making it up as I go. Is IT Park a an informal or formal model? Uh, here, formal, informal. Next is formal. This is learning. We're learning. Oh my gosh. Let's look at IT Park maps. 3D. And this is an old image. I guess this view is better. So kana siya. Is IT Park. IT Park is, I zoom out a bit so you can see the boundary. The boundary is like here. It disappears when I zoom in, but I think there you can see it faintly. Is it a formal or informal model? Let's look at the answers. Two informal, one formal. Okay. Maybe you can get a few more votes, maybe three more votes. Let's look at IT Park again. So looking at IT Park, I'll zoom in a bit. You guys already know where the IT Park buildings are. Is it a formal or informal model? Uh, according to Moten. We have to keep saying according to Moten because these ideas are specific to Moten, and I haven't read enough books to see if these ideas are agreed upon. But generally, the reviews of this particular book, Urban Design, is very positive. Or like you see other professors talking about this in Sydney. Yes, go ahead. Both Puede both informal. Here we go. Yes, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Because like in design, it's not really black and white. Sorry, nakapin si Lance. Could you explain more, Hazel? Why do you think it's both? And like if this were a quiz, I would say informal. Sorry, wala yung mic. Oh, sige, type lang sa. Sige, type your ideas in there. So the reason why I think it's informal, because you can see it right away. The massing for each of the IT Park towers are very sort of out of place, basically. So it's their own thing. The IT Park towers are their own thing. And then it doesn't fit well in the sort of, or it stands out in the context of Cebu City down here. Although I think I'm going to uh, talk about how it can also be, sorry, a formal model. So as we looked at it earlier, if we go down here, we can see there's like unity inside the lot, yeah, similar building heights inside the lot. The main reason why I would think Moten would say this is informal because once you go outside the lot, it doesn't fit anymore. And then there's this added sort of layer of challenges is that Cebu City is still a developing city. It's not. It hasn't reached its like final form yet. So it's constantly growing, constantly improving, and the urban fabric is compared to other cities still very young. Even though we were founded in the let's say 1600s, we haven't developed like this set of planning laws, planning ordinances that would help sort of govern how buildings should be built and how public space should be protected. Let's see here. Now my answer, Disha. Informal is for the buildings, formal sa grid plans sa lots. Oh, exactly. Okay, that makes sense. So In the city scale, it's informal, but in the lot scale, basically the site scale, it's formal. It's kanang similar building heights, sense of closure, etc., etc. So now I hope you're getting more and more used to the idea that whatever you're building, you have the different scales to think about. You have your own single building scale, you have your own community scale, like directly outside your lot, and then you have like the city scale. Like you go all the way like this, although you can't see your building anymore. But when you get to this scale, you're thinking about the stuff we talked about in 3133 in urban planning. You're thinking about where does your electricity come from? Where does your water come from? How will you dispose the waste? When you go into the sort of urban design level, you're thinking about building heights. How are the streets designed? How are the sidewalks designed, if any? And then you go down to your building scale, and then you think about how does my building fit in this like group of like in its local context, basically. Does it fit within its neighbor buildings, its adjacent buildings? Basically, the building elements or the built environment that it's directly adjacent to. So, for example, this, what is this called? I don't know the main, these grand residences. So it fits here on this view, but if you look at the back, it doesn't fit at all. So there's this like dual sort of problem where you can have the building fit on one sort of street, but then completely ignore the other street. And this is mostly because of the client, mostly because who's developing this project, and then the laws of our city don't encourage good urban design, or like there are no good urban design laws. So this is the challenge of practicing in the Philippines, where it's basically a free for all. And then sometimes especially if the client doesn't know about good urban design, they would just always require you to build as much as you can because they're paying for it. And if they don't like what you're designing, they just move on to the next client, to the next architect who does design the way they want. So we're being pulled apart basically. Do we stand our ground, or like if you believe in good urban design, do you like defend good urban design? Or if you need the money, which is not really a bad thing, you have to like bend like basically your principles if you believe those principles in the first place. So this is something that hopefully you guys will be thinking about, not just now, but like in your practice. Like, do I do? It sounds so preachy. Do you do good design, or do you make bad design but you need to eat? So there's no right or wrong answer there. And then it's because we have to fight not only the client, but we also have to fight the laws, the building laws, because there are no laws to support good urban design. And this is why the Philippines is the way it is. It's basically might makes right. Whoever has the money makes the final choice. So unfortunately, that's just part of like cities growing. I'm still hopeful, like within the next, let's say, 30 or 50 years, some of my colleagues, like if naandar mo Sir Neil Manhares, he was very optimistic about the future of Cebu. Even former Dean Espina is also very optimistic about Cebu. Like maybe next 25 years or next 10 years, some laws will be passed to like help city help Cebu City look like London or Rome or whatever, with improved public spaces. We have like the cycling lanes, we have the green loop projects, we have the third bridge, as we discussed last time in AR 3133. Okay, so it basically took me an hour to get back to where we left off last time, but hopefully I made it even more clearer what these 5 methods of composition are. And I'm planning to make more modules for this part, just so that you're like guided and like you can copy paste it or whatever and use it for your next classes. But if you have the book, it's all here. I'm basically restating it in a way that hopefully everyone understands. And then finally, the right angle, as we mentioned before, um, very simple. Just use right angles. And like Moten has here a diagram of how right angles impact sort of the street level. Let's see, where is that diagram? It's somewhere here. Here. Mhm. This is why I didn't have a module for this, because I just like basically showed the class the book, okay, the previous batch. Mamatay ko ning luas. It's like driving me crazy. Okay, basically, when you build at right angles, you can view the building and it will look sort of visually in place or part of the complex, talking about how the vanishing points all align. So what are these vanishing points? Let me highlight it to you guys. So this is your building here in black, and then the surrounding buildings are arranged or like are related to your existing building through the right angle. It's either perpendicular or parallel. So in view one over here, this is view one, and this is the view one in like first person perspective, that's you. You see that these vanishing points all connect, or like they all have similar vanishing points. So something, I'm like exaggerating it, but kind of like that. And then over here, you see that the vanishing point is over there. And vanishing point is over there, like something like that. I'm exaggerating. And then this sense of like similar vanishing or having one single vanishing point makes your building visually fit into the context. Like your client or your user or your guest may not be consciously aware of it, but on a subconscious level, they feel like this building fits in this context. So those like vanishing points connect. This connects over here, and then the horizon line is its vanishing point, something like that. You have you guys done manual drafting for perspectives in what do you call this in first year? Yes. Mag-raise ang mga hands if
Yes,
you did.
sir.
Yeah. So basically, that's the idea. If the buildings are arranged in right angles, they will have similar vanishing points. Therefore, the buildings visually, and you can see it, you walk around, fit together. We can actually see that in IT Park. Let me do IT Park. If we go down here, because everything is parallel, we go down this road, you see even though you're covered with trees. This is another thing. It seems like we're using trees too much and we can't see the built environment. Murag wala nagsabot ang architect ng landscape architect, competing architects basically. But you still see the what do you call this? The vanishing point going here, the vanishing point going there. And let's look at the corner. Let's see, kanang corner with like buildings. Here. You see the vanishing point of the Metro Ayala going there. You see the vanishing point of this new building going there. And then this also here. And then because there's no building here, it looks a bit off. So when it's fully built, it should look something like the Churchill Gardens. And when you go in the Churchill Gardens, you're always sort of visually in the same quote unquote space because like everything's aligned, everything's perpendicular, arranged by the right angle, and all the buildings create this unique vanishing point. So it's not jarring. It's according to Moten, for you, it might some of you may not be convinced, and that's totally fine. This is just one way of thinking. Even in this garden, you see the what they call this, the vanishing points connecting over there. You see the vanishing points connecting over here, even though you have a circular building here. It could be a significant building. I don't know what this is. I think it's an observatory of some kind. Let me check. The lamp house. So yeah, it's a lamp house. It's a special element, maybe a unique feature to the community. And maybe this structure has some meaning or like a deeper meaning to the people who live here. And this is how you create landmarks. This is how you create what urban planners and urban designers say, like a sense of place. So this makes this unique structure makes this corner or this like intersection of Churchill Gardens a unique space because there's a landmark. And then if it's unique, it's memorable. If it's memorable, it's meaningful. And if it's meaningful, it's valuable to the community. So they would take care of it, they would clean it, etc., etc. What some urban designers and planners would say, why Cebu City and other developing countries look very dirty, like in the public spaces, because number one, the community is poor and we don't have proper waste management. But number two, the architecture and the built environment does not uplift or make the situation better. It's just there. I'm just doing my own thing, mostly because you're not being paid enough, mostly because you don't have time because like you're not getting paid. You need to finish it. You're on a budget. You're on a deadline. So the built environment suffers. And on a larger scale, it's because the government hasn't done its job. The utilities aren't like being supplied. But as architects, hopefully, when you graduate and also pass a board exam, you would sort of remember this lecture and think about your duty to the built environment. Because if we make one good building, and then if you like what they call this, allow me to be a bit dramatic or theatrical. If we have one good building, it might inspire other architects and just the people at large, because like Loreto mentioned, the people don't really know what good design is, because like they don't know, because they don't talk about this stuff. They're accountants, they're lawyers. I especially have this thing against doctors, and basically my thing is I think doctors have no taste. But I'm generalizing. Basically, if you have one good building, it's like a billboard, it's a poster, it's a calling card for good design. So if you make one good building, hopefully it will slowly convince the minds of the general public that yes, we can do good design. And it won't happen overnight. It won't happen like probably in 5 years, but maybe in 20 years, 30 years, something like that. Okay, so that's the right angle. Next, so the last two, I could probably put this in another video so it's not so long. I'll stop recording here. The last two